Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. It's Jerry Miller. It's great to be with you across Charlottesville, Central Virginia, Albemarle County, the Commonwealth, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. Fantastic show lined up for you. Ian Glomski, the entrepreneur, the founder, the PhD behind Vitae Spirits, will join us in a matter of moments. I want to spotlight this entrepreneur's journey from microbiologist to entrepreneur, founder, and owner of a tasting room that has had a lot of momentum and a lot of positivity in our Charlottesville community. We're going to spotlight his flip book, his birth story as a person, as a man. We're going to talk about what he loves about Charlottesville and Central Virginia, about being a part of this fantastic community, and also the who, what, when, where, why of his business and how he's climbed the vertical ladder of entrepreneurial success here in Charlottesville. We'll celebrate his spirits. We'll talk about the trials and the tribulations of being an entrepreneur, all the fun stuff we love to celebrate here on the I Love CVille Show. Before we get to Ian, let's thank some of the fantastic folks that make this program possible. We want to celebrate entrepreneurs, and I think Intrastate Pest and Service Companies, a 4-generation strong business, epitomizes positivity as entrepreneurs in our community. 4 generations strong. They started in 1969. Mr. Wells had one truck. He had a dream to start a business, and he was doing it through sweat equity and hard work. After he serviced one client and went to their home, he literally went to a phone booth and called his second customer and said, "May I go to your home now and service you?" Today, they are 4 generations strong with office in the Shenandoah Valley. Their headquarters around the corner from Boden's on Harris. They've penetrated the Richmond market and, frankly, have a Commonwealth-wide footprint. 4 generations of family running this business. It's something I want to do with my company as my son matures and gets a bit older here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I also would like to celebrate the good doctor, Scott Wagner, Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Who's got your back? Dr. Wagner's got your back, whether it's chiropractic care, whether it's sports medicine, whether it's physical therapy. Dr. Wagner and his staff and his team are changing people's lives in Central Virginia. Our business, I Love CVille and VMV Brands, are the proud advertising agency of record for both Intrastate and Dr. Wagner. We have watched over the course of 6 or 7 years as these businesses have blossomed and as they continue to contribute to our Charlottesville ecosystem and our Central Virginia society in a positive fashion. Guys, there's 4 people that make this program possible. I undoubtedly have the easy job of being myself and talking into this microphone for an hour a day. It's a guy like Harris Tolber, our director, a gentleman like Judah Wickhauer, our producer, and Lauren Linsky, another producer on this program, that have the hard jobs of making sure we stay on the air, we look good, and making sure I stay focused, and that's no easy task. So I want to celebrate our team. And on that note, Harris Tolber, what I'd like to do is go to the studio cam, and I would like to welcome Ian Glomski to the program. Ian, it is truly a pleasure to have you on the show. Before we get to you, and she is watching right now, I want to celebrate Catherine Matthews of Iron Poffles and Coffee. Catherine helped facilitate this interview, so thank you very much, Catherine. And we hope to potentially talk with you tomorrow on our restaurant roundtable. Now I'm going to get out of the way and give the show to you and ask for the flip book of you, the person. Mm-hmm. Not every day I get to sit across with someone as smart as you, a PhD, a microbiologist, who then pivots his career path and becomes a master distiller. Before we get to that, I'd like to know you, the person. The who, what, when, where, why. Yeah. The show is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. I do want to thank you for inviting me here. It's really a pleasure, and I'm really happy with the things you do.
Thanks.
It's good for the community. I don't completely know where to start, but I have a fairly complex background and upbringing in many ways. I was born in the Chicago area, but at the age of 5 or so, I moved to out kind of the burbs of Boston. My dad got a job there. But that does mean that most of my extended family is still in the Chicagoland area. And my dad had a big Irish Catholic family, so I have lots of relatives out there. But really most of my formative years, I would say, were in the Boston suburbs, basically from the age of 4 or 5 until actually graduating from college. But there's some interludes in there, like when my mother and father got divorced, my dad moved to Kansas, so I spent a fair amount of my summertime in Kansas. That's actually kind of where I really learned how to drive and things of that sort. And then finished up college in Boston and worked actually in biotech for a while. That's kind of how I started kind of getting in the world of microbiology. I mean, I'd always been into it because I've been making alcohol since I was 18 or so. Maybe we'll come back to that. But basically, I was working at a biotech company trying to discover new antibiotics and things of that sort. But at that biotech is when I learned that if I really wanted to do the type of science I wanted to do, I had to get a higher degree. And so that's why I eventually applied to a bunch of different schools, and UC Berkeley in California kind of like matched my personality the best and everything like that. And it was a fantastic school, so that's ultimately where I went to work on my PhD, focusing once again on microbiology, but in particular infectious diseases, so bacteria that make us sick. And got my PhD there. In that kind of biomedical world, you don't finish with your PhD usually. Usually you have to do additional training on top of that. So I had to do postdoctoral work. And I managed to land a pretty sweet fellowship that basically funded me for 4 years to move to Paris, France, and study at the Institut Pasteur, where I kind of cut my chops and kind of built my expertise in what would become the base of my professorship to come down the line, where I kind of became an expert in anthrax. So
Wow.
So I worked on biodefense stuff. I wore what they call pappers, which are the big hoods with the
You see the movies.
Yeah, it's very much like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I learned how to work with that stuff. And worked on vaccines that were being developed for the French army and things of that sort. And I had a fairly successful postdoctoral career, and that was enough to basically put me in the running for getting professorships back in the United States. And I had a couple choices, but UVA, once again, felt nice and felt right. So I accepted a professorship at the what was then called the microbiology department in the School of Medicine at the University of Virginia. And I was there for about 7-ish years. And ultimately, at the end of that 7 years, I was kind of up for promotion and things of that sort, which is a pretty arduous process. And at that point, it's kind of an inflection point, and that's when I kind of realized my heart wasn't in it. A lot of things kind of precipitated that, and I kind of call it my midlife crisis. But in the end, we ended up staying in Charlottesville and opening our distillery here.
Who's we?
We. So it is a family business.
Love it.
So so it is like I am the founder. So in many ways I'm the blood, sweat, and tears.
The face?
Yeah, I mean that's honestly true. Is that we're at a size where I'm still the face of the company. I am essentially the primary salesman and everything like that. But the group of owners is me, my wife, brother, father, mother, and stepdad.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and also it's really awesome. I have a board of directors meeting starting tomorrow,
Awesome.
where it's basically like a reason to have a family reunion twice a year, but we focus on the business for a little while in that process. So in a snapshot in terms of like my background and things of that sort. That's the long and the short of it, I would say.
I love it. Let's sizzle reel that. Start with my question and go to his answer, Harris Tolber. Thank you, Tina Leonard Raybon, for watching. She says, I love how you start off with the birth stories. Always interesting to hear someone like Ian and the background. Ian has a really cool story. Thank you, Tina, for joining us. Ray Cadell, thank you for sharing the show. If you can like and share the show, that would mean a lot to us. You called it a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
You're a young man, though. I mean, midlife crisis. I mean, what was it? Was it you were just not getting the sense of fulfillment from the microbiology piece, from working on that kind of, science? Is that what it was?
So I would say there's a couple parts to that question.
Okay.
You'll find out that I rarely have one answer to a question.
I love it.
Yeah, and there were things that happened in my private life, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but then that influenced my professional life.
Okay.
So 2012 was a big year for me. I did turn 40, so if you multiply by 2, 80 is a pretty ripe old age, so that's midlife in a sense. But some other big things happened, one of which was bad circumstances. For my 40th birthday, I went on an awesome fly fishing trip in the Wind River wilderness of Wyoming with a bunch of other guys, including my stepdad and my brother. And when we were coming out, we smelled smoke. And we had actually broken up into two groups because part of our group was kind of older guys that were slower. So us faster, younger guys went in deeper and stayed longer. But when we were coming out, we went over a hill and there was a wall of flame. Ended up being a 24,000 acre forest fire.
Whoa.
And it's one of those situations where like we had to like gather ourselves, decide what we're going to do about this situation. Luckily, my brother and I are pretty good outdoorsmen. My stepdad is too. So we broke out the topo maps and started making maps, basically how to get, we were about 30 miles in from nowhere, how to get out where there's no trees. So we kind of looked at where the peaks were high enough that no trees grew, things of that sort. So we had a pretty rough route to get out of there. And honestly, if the wind changed drastically, we could have been fried because you have no idea where the edges of the fire are and stuff like that. And it was stressful, and unfortunately at that time, we didn't really know it, but my stepdad started kind of going through congestive heart failure. And so he was starting to physically not do so well. And luckily, I had just finished right before this trip training for a triathlon, so I was in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
So we ended up like taking it slow and kind of making sure we all got okay. And we got out fine, but it was one of those things where like
it was an awakening.
It could have gone wrong, and it could have been a really big problem. They helicoptered some people out of the area and stuff like that. So that's one thing. I'm hesitant to bring this up because it was a painful thing for the community, but I was also a jurist on the George Huguely trial.
Okay.
So I had to look at photographs of a girl that was beaten up on a daily basis for a while, and it was pretty emotionally taxing.
Love.
Yeah. And it was emotionally taxing. And like as a jurist, you're not allowed to talk about it, so I couldn't unload the emotional stress on my partner Susanna or anything like that. So you have to bottle it up. And so that was another thing. I mean, that's another thing about makes you start to take a look and
perspective.
And place value on the years you have left. So that's another thing. It's not a big deal, but I got like my first cancer at the age of 42, just like skin cancer. So it's no big deal, but I got like my first old man's disease. And so all those things just put me in the state of mind of reassessing what I wanted to do with my life in many ways. While at the professional level, I was I had great colleagues at UVA, and I have very few negative things to say about UVA. But the kind of biomedical research world at large in the early teens, 2000s, was kind of becoming more and more conservative with a little c. Money was drying up. So the agencies that basically give us our money to do our work kind of became more and more risk averse.
Understood.
So I knew I'd be writing grants to basically fund my research for the rest of my life, but I was hoping to write kind of cutting edge, high risk, high reward type things for the rest of my life. And that's what's fun to me. But with the kind of the risk averse environment, I had to keep on putting in grants that were 99% likely to work, and that's no fun. And so that takes, and if I'm going to put in all this work, I don't want to be not having fun.
Right.
And so started looking around for other options, and I had already had a fair amount of exposure to the alcohol industry. This same group that is kind of the owners of Vitae Spirits, minus my wife, she wasn't kind of on the scene at this time, but we own two wineries too, as a family.
Okay.
In northern Arizona, and because of that, I had worked at the wineries. I worked in the fields. I did a fair amount of work setting up their laboratory for like sample analysis and things like that. I actually worked the crush, as they call it, in 2007, where like all the grapes come in and you turn them into wine. So I had exposure to the alcohol world. I liked alcohol at a personal level.
Who doesn't?
So that kind of got all the wheels rolling, and kind of ultimately became Vitae Spirits through all that. So.
That's a sizzle reel. Start with my question all the way through that answer. So a lot you covered here. Yeah. Melissa Closeheart watching. Wow, she goes, wow, heavy topic to come in on. I love the show. I'm glad you changed careers because we love your products undoubtedly at Junction Restaurant. Melissa Closeheart is the executive chef at Junction Restaurant and a very good friend of this program. Talk about the crossroads.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had, sounds like a few crossroads there. Crossroads 1 was escaping out of what could have been potentially a deadly forest fire.
Yeah.
Crossroads 2 was the potential PTSD and or anguish and or mental struggle that goes with the Yardley Love George Huguely trial. That was a messy, ugly situation, especially the inability to verbalize or share the emotion, because as a juror you have to compartmentalize that. And then Crossroads 3 was the disenchantment and the lack of fulfillment that came with your professional career and doing day-to-day tasks that you found potentially to be mundane as opposed to fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll get out of the way and let you jump in.
Yeah, so that is a good summary. But the truth of the matter is that I think there's a lot of the world that has those things happening to them also. So like I'm not unique in situations like that.
Where you could be unique, and I don't mean to interrupt you, where you could be unique is you have a unique mindset in that you have the makeup of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And the entrepreneurial mindset is very different than the mindset. For example, and I'm not marginalizing anyone.
Yep.
You know, some mindsets love the consistency of the 9 to 5, the 9 to 6, the 9 to 7, where it's like, I know what to expect, and I go in, and it's going to be fine, and I can knock it out. As an entrepreneur, and I'm one as well, that's the opposite of what we want.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. And that's why I was lucky that through our wineries, to some degree, I had a role model. I had seen my brother do all these things, and I knew what being an entrepreneur entailed. And so I went in with fairly wide eyes. And I am, I would say, innately to some degree, a risk taker.
Yeah, me too.
And so you have to have that personality type to do it. And I tend not to be one that grunts it out with no end in sight. Like, I mean, if I'm doing something I'm not enjoying, I have to have a good reason to not be enjoying it. I have to see something at the end of the tunnel to do it. But if I don't see something at the end of the tunnel, I'm going to start making changes to basically put me in a place where I'd prefer to be. I mean, I could have stayed. I mean, I was in a tenure track position at UVA.
Which is the dream.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would have got it. You know, it is a rigorous test and things of that sort, but like the chair of my department was putting together an all-star team of like emeritus professors, like to basically do the best we could possibly do to guarantee that I get basically promotion and tenure and stuff like that. But that was actually, to some degree, that was one of the other things that made me take action, is that I had all these people rooting for me and spending a lot of time and energy to make me progress. And then I realized maybe progress towards something I didn't actually want. So I felt like almost I had an ethical obligation to not waste these people's time and step back and say, this isn't for me. But that introduced tons of risk. I mean, I would have had a nice, basically not completely guaranteed, but a state.
Essentially guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, a tenure track position.
You have to do a lot to lose that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, which is somewhat true, and I'm not sure if that is true of some professorships. Honestly, in the biomedical world, a lot of your, I guess your existence revolves around you bringing in money.
Really?
Yeah. So as really my actual kind of contract stated that about 85% of my work had to be research, and I had about 15% for teaching. And that research is self-funded. You almost run a little business within the university where you bring in the money, that ultimately, like you bring in money through grants and foundations and stuff like that. That pays my salary, it pays all the tuitions of my students, it pays overhead to the university, so like more than half of the winning usually goes to the university to basically keep the lights on and building maintenance and all that type of stuff. So you have to bring in money, you have to deal with budgets, you have to hire and fire. So it's
you like that stuff?
You know, I mean, I like being in control. I don't know if I could ever. I mean, so when I was a professor, I had a boss, as in like the chair of my department, but he wasn't talking to me on a daily basis. He was basically there to formally do reviews every now and then, and there as a resource. But on a day-to-day basis, I was the one calling all the shots within my lab. So it's a slightly different set of rules than the free market kind of outside of the university and stuff like that. But but there was a fair amount of overlap.
Autonomy?
Yeah, it was a lot of autonomy. I hope I'm not shooting myself in the foot for the future, but I would have a pretty tough time having a boss ever again, because I like to call the shots. I
Same
like
for
my
me.
visions to be realized. I don't like doing it for somebody else in many ways and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's part of the way that I'm made. I'm not a follow the 9 to 5.
You're an alpha.
Well, but it's fun. Like, and you may say that, but I think we were talking earlier. I'm a pretty laid back guy.
You are.
So
But you can be an alpha and laid back.
No, I know, and that's what I think I am. And it's kind of funny because there's different ways of expressing that alphaness.
Sure.
In many ways, there are many types of alphas that are directly competing against other alphas
Sure.
and stuff like that. My competitor is usually myself.
Yeah, you're an alpha, and I don't want to assume, but you're an alpha who is constantly searching for personal challenge.
Yeah.
And the time you don't have personal challenge is when you get bored.
Right.
And when you get bored, you get unhappy.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly it. I mean, I like focus. I like seeing the
Things
fruits.
actualized.
Yeah, the
tangible
fruits.
production.
Yeah, and that's it actually. So, kind of when I left my professorship, NPR did a little interview with me, and that was one of the things I talked about. I was sitting on my front porch with Richard Harris, which is the kind of the science correspondent for NPR, and that was one of the things that I said. One of the beauties of what I'm doing now is that I have this bottle in my hand. I plunk it down in between us, and we both smile and have a good time together because of that thing I put together.
Tangible production.
Exactly. And that was a little bit different in my professorship. Like, my value in the professorship in many ways was abstract. It was my publications, it was my reputation, it was things like that. It wasn't a concrete thing to hold in your hand and everything like that. So I'm a pretty kind of materialistic, not in like I want to have lots of money type of person, but I'm pretty much of this world. So having a material product that represents my efforts is pretty satisfying.
I love that answer, and I love the mindset. I want to backtrack on something that you said earlier in the interview, where you said you have been making alcohol since you were 18 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I was not going to let that go. As someone who's probably been drinking alcohol since he was 14 years old, please tell me how you make alcohol since you're 18 years old.
Yeah, so it was very pragmatic, yet again. I went to college, at least in Massachusetts. The drinking age was 21. I liked alcohol. I'm a do-it-yourself kind of guy. So one way for me to get alcohol was for me to make it. It was totally legal for me to buy barley, yeast, and hops. So I started making beer. And in a weird way, that actually...
Is that the easiest alcohol to make?
No. I would say probably stuff like hard apple cider.
Like moonshine?
Well, distilling is a whole nother level of complexity, but simple fermentations, like
Gotcha.
turning sweet apple cider into cider, or even like mead, so turning honey into alcoholic beverages. Those two are probably some of the easiest. Beer is a little more complicated simply because you have to treat the grains to free up the sugar for the yeast to eat and turn into alcohol, and that's a couple extra steps and stuff like that. Whereas fruit and honey have sugar ready to go, so like the yeast just go at it right away and turn it into alcohol. But I was kind of saying is that my beer production is actually kind of what segued into my microbiology career. So I had kind of parallel careers going in some ways, where I went through a pretty early phase of my beer production where I was making really crappy beer. And so I signed up for my first microbiology class in college, kind of as a side project for my microbiology lab. I brought in samples of my beer and isolated all the different organisms that were growing in my beer. Ended up that there was a bunch of stuff besides yeast, mostly stuff that simply came from my mouth, like lactobacillus, which are the things that make yogurt and milk and things like that. So I was getting contaminations by those things. And so like that whole process of finding the microorganisms, identifying them, and then kind of learning their history to find out maybe where I was getting my contamination from, that gave me an interest in microbiology. So then that kind of became...
Springboard.
Yeah, springboard into like my biomedical microbiology kind of career, while on the sidelines, I always had alcohol production in some way too.
Isn't it crazy how, and sizzle reel that, Harris, isn't it crazy how life goes full circle? I mean, creating booze is a gateway for a microbiology career. But the creation of booze at a time where you were incredibly impressionable, 18 years old, was something that probably never left you from a, I enjoy this standpoint. And now, how old are you now?
I am 47.
47.
Yeah.
Almost 30 years later, creating booze.
Yeah. Oh,
That's amazing. Isn't that amazing? Do you ever think about that?
Oh, it's totally crazy. I knew who would have thunk?
Yeah. I mean, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No. And here's another irony. As I mentioned that I was at the Institut Pasteur in Paris. But Louis Pasteur basically discovered the connection between microbes and the production of alcohol. And so in his crypt, he has all these mosaics of kind of like all of his great discoveries. And there's this whole basically plaque made of like Byzantine tiles, like of the moment when he discovered that the yeast make alcohol. And that's when we kind of like discovered what it's all about and everything like that. So even just like working as an Institut Pasteur, there's a lot of I guess, coincidence and things coming back together and everything, too.
Your family has a background, and you said owning 2 wineries?
Yeah.
Owning 2 wineries,
Yep.
so it's in the blood.
Yep.
You've been, making booze, like you said, since you were 18. What was the aha moment or the, I'm going to start a distillery in Charlottesville, Virginia, on Henry Avenue? I mean, tell me that story.
And that it's a little bit complicated, too, because,
I get that from you.
Yeah. Back when I was starting to cast around looking for a new career, essentially, I had come to distilling through a bunch of different ways. And if you make alcohol and you're always pushing yourself, that is the most complex version. Like, you have to make good wine and make good beer in order to make either a good brandy or a good whiskey. It's a multi-step process, and distilling is the most complicated. So pushing myself leads me to distilling. But at that time, so that was somewhere around 2013, 2014, the laws were so restrictive in Virginia, and they still are very restrictive, but they're more restrictive to such a degree that I basically couldn't have had a tasting room during that time period.
Right.
So when I built my business model and things like that, it was really tough to make the numbers work out without a tasting room.
Right.
So honestly, we were very close to building this distillery in Boston. I was so far as I was negotiating leases in South Boston.
Wow.
And then the laws changed. Our legislature, our House of Delegates.
They had an awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah, they supported entrepreneurs. I've heard this from so many brewers and like distillers.
Yeah, and it matters. And we have a lot of fights, and it will probably come up. We still have a lot of fights to wage, but things have been going in the right direction. And just the fact that I have a tasting room, I reworked my business model, and the numbers were a lot better looking.
Of course. Yeah.
And I was already living in Charlottesville. I had friends. I wanted to live here.
The rent's lower than South Boston?
No kidding. The lease that I was negotiating in South Boston was $9,000 a month just for the building. And we freaking bought our building over in Rose Hill, and we pay half that much.
That's amazing.
In mortgage. So, yeah. So I really don't know if I would have succeeded if I was in South Boston.
$9,000 a month for a startup would have been brutal.
Hell
dude.
yeah. I mean, the overhead on that is really tough.
Right.
I mean, that's a long, as with all
it's a
businesses,
lot of tastings.
It takes a lot of time to become profitable.
Right.
So, all that money going down the drain before you're making money is just flabbergasting. So
I love this story. So you bought the building, which
Yeah.
is an asset that you could leverage down the road should you choose to expand.
Yep.
And real estate, as we know, in the city of Charlottesville is only going to go north.
Yeah.
A long-term asset for you and your business.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the importance and I love this piece of the distiller or the brewery or the vineyard, whatever it may be, their business model, the importance of the tasting room.
Yeah.
When people get the tasting room there, they're able to sample your product. They're able to get a feel for what you're about. You're able to charge them a good margin for the tasting, and then they can leave with bottles.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and then even the bottle, being able to sell bottles there is a new thing too, and that's a huge difference. I mean, really, one of our restrictions is, as a distillery, our tasting room, we can only serve a total of 3 ounces per person per day. That comes out to be about 2 cocktails, which is good.
3 ounces per person per day. And a shot is 1.5 ounces?
Yes.
Okay.
At the government kind of levels.
Okay.
If you go to restaurants,
That's a little heavier pour.
Well, it's often 2-ish ounces
Right.
at restaurants and stuff, but the government sanctions.
And if they know you, you get maybe 3 ounces.
Exactly. But so we're limited to 2 cocktails.
Okay.
So really on a per person basis, we can't make a whole lot of money. So it's really nice to have a situation where we put it all in context. We talk about what we're doing so people know what they're getting and what makes it different and things of that sort. We spend a lot of time developing our cocktails too. So we change our cocktails seasonally. So within the company, it's in a sense, it's a competition where we all work on a bunch of cocktails. We come together, and then whichever ones are the best are that season's cocktail menu. But then, since we can only sell 2 cocktails, it's awesome to then have the person have the ability to walk over, grab a bottle, and we get kind of another sale, and they can make it at home. We try to also stock kind of all of the ingredients that are necessary to make our cocktails and stuff like that, so they can kind of do a one-stop, grab the bitters, grab the syrups, grab a bottle, go and make it at home if they like to. And because of that, we post all of our all the cocktails that we develop. That's on our website and stuff like that too, so people can go home and do it themselves if they'd like to.
I love it. Andre Xavier from CVille Hop on Tours. Yeah. He says, Ian is amazing. I love their gin. Thank you, Andre, for commenting and joining us on the show. Bellamy Brown is watching, City Council candidate. Bellamy, we love you here on this program. Emily Holter from The Local is currently watching. If you guys can like and share the stream, no matter what channel you are watching, that would mean the world to us. Just give it a like, give it a share. The business, how long has it been in operation?
Right.
The pivots, the changes, the evolutions you've seen as you've matured.
Yeah. So that's what we were incorporated. Like, we formed our LLC in early 2014.
Okay.
So that I could go and look around and start finding, honestly, a building, which is one of the biggest, I'd say, hurdles in the process. Location is really important. And so we ended up, we found the building on Craigslist, and we purchased it by...
you found the building
on Craigslist.
It's amazing.
Yep. And and then we purchased that in November 2014. So basically before the end of the year, we had a building at least lined up. It used to be in the Henry Ave Learning Center, so it used to be a school,
right?
An alternative school.
Uh-huh.
And they moved to another location, so the building kind of was vacant and up for sale. And then it took about a year of kind of planning and construction for us to turn the school into a distillery. So in November 2015 is when I first fired up the still for the first time. So that's kind of like when production kind of started, but in all honesty, like in the very beginning, it's kind of working out the kinks, getting the recipes kind of rolling the way you want it to, as well as building up an inventory so you have something to sell.
Right.
So it was kind of early, I think it was April 2016 that our first product, our Platinum Rum, hit the shelves. And then we've been kind of rolling from there. We had our soft opening of the tasting room in October 2016. Our grand opening, March 2017. So we just actually celebrated our 2-year anniversary last weekend of the tasting room being open to the public and everything like that.
That's amazing. How is okay, and this is a straightforward question. Mm-hmm. Beer and wine, in a lot of ways, perhaps more approachable and more appealing perhaps to the masses.
Yeah.
Did you consider at all beer and wine?
Yep.
Second part of the question is, when you were launching the business, were you like, is a town of 50,000 people roughly going to embrace a liquor distillery?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yo, absolutely. No, and those are things you have to think about.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start with the first question first, which makes sense. Why not beer or wine or something like that? You know, honestly, it was a little bit of a business point of view, but also a personal point of view. So looking at the wine world, which I was fairly familiar with, and the beer world, I think both of those industries are somewhere near their plateau.
Because they're saturated.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's quite there yet, but I think it's fair to say they're nearer to it than distilleries. Distilleries are the last of kind of the craft alcohols to get up and running for a lot of different reasons, including kind of like governmental structures and things like that are in your way. It's expensive too. So it was a little bit of a more open industry in terms of growth potential and things of that sort. So that was kind of why I gravitated towards that. But like I said, it was also something that it was slightly, for beer and wine, it was a little bit, for me, been there, done that. or I wanted to do something different.
You want to be challenged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that led into distilling. But it is a nascent industry, as you kind of alluded to a little bit. In the early days, when I was just kind of talking about starting a distillery, more than one person would ask me like, "Oh, what type of IPA are you going to make?"
Right.
And I'm like, "I'm not making beer."
Right.
Because like people just don't even. It's not on. At least at that time, it wasn't on people's radar.
Well, it's because the marketplace. Yeah, exactly. They weren't educated. The marketplace wasn't educated.
Yeah. So that is an explicit goal of Vitae Spirits. I do lots of tours. So Fridays and Saturdays, I bring people out back and I step through the production process so that they know this is not the way that beer is made. This is what craft distilling is.
Love that.
And we do classes. Like we've taught a number of classes on cocktail classes, how to make flavored syrups, how to make bitters, things of that sort. That we're trying to build the cocktail and the spirits culture as well. And kind of, in some ways, communicating our vision of what we think that should be also.
Because if the marketplace is more educated, they're more open-minded. If they're more open-minded, they're more accepted, and more willing to accept different ideas and different products and different kinds of liquor. And I think right now, it's so funny, and I'm going to throw this to you, and you're a lot smarter than I am. I think the beer industry went through this evolution, and I'm just going to throw a rough number out there, say, 20-some years ago, Sam Adams was one of the pioneers with this in Boston. And the evolution was, there's got to be, and I'm not knocking it, because if they want to partner with this program, I'm certainly willing to take their money as a for-profit business. But a lot of folks in the marketplace was probably saying, there's got to be something that tastes better than Bud Light and Miller Lite. Okay? And then someone like Sam Adams comes in, and Sam Adams says, let's start with the craft beer. And then Sam Adams, in a lot of ways, is a pioneer. And then once the pioneer's there, then there's a lot of people that are like, all right, I'm not as scared to make this home brew and take it to market because this person has done it. So with liquor, in a lot of ways, you have like the giants, like the Jim Beam and like the Jack Daniels. And for so long, they have had so much market share. And just like beer, with the evolution of beer away from Bud Light and Miller Lite, and you see the domestics like Bud Light and Miller Lite, sales for those are going down because craft beer is taking the market share. I think we could see a similar evolution in liquor category. Thoughts?
I totally agree. And so that's what I 100% agree. In some ways, too, I would say in the case of beer, they gained a lot by the fact that home brewing became popular, too. Because it wasn't like people learning to do it made them gain appreciation for it.
Sure.
And most people realize it's a lot of hard work, so they wouldn't produce enough beer to replace buying beer.
You can only make so much beer in your bathtub.
Right. So that taught people what good beer tastes like and appreciate when it's done right and stuff like that. And so the situation with spirits is a little bit different, and it's a little bit more challenging in a couple ways. You did mention that kind of in the early craft beer days, essentially all the big brands were identical watery beer. So in a sense, I'd be willing to say crappy beer. And so there was a big niche.
He said that, I didn't say that.
And so there's a big niche to make good beer. The truth of the matter is, for spirits, it's not quite the same. You know, like the Jim Beams and Jack Daniels and stuff like that are making fairly good products. They're not crappy products.
You believe that?
There's exceptions. So and it's a little bit more complicated, but that's one reason why I'm making rum.
Because you don't see enough respectable and legitimate options in the rum category?
Yes.
And then, I mean, because how much can someone drink a Captain Morgan Spice rum? Right.
And that's totally valid. And that's what
I mean, because that's it's a teeny bopper drink.
Oh yeah. And that's exactly the uphill battle that every time someone walks into our tasting room, everyone has been scarred by the big rum producers, whether it be
taste aversion.
Yeah. And so I have to then, or not I, but we have to retrain them and basically put in front of them and say, this is what real rum is like. This is not the sweet Kool-Aid stuff that you had as rail drinks in college. There are sipping rums out there that many would say are rival scotches and the best bourbons and things of that, and brandies and stuff like that. It's just that awareness has not been raised. I would say in terms of our long-term goals, that's one of the things we want to do, both produce that product that will open people's eyes, but make them realize that there's a big rum world out there, actually. And right now, because it's underappreciated, you can get damn good rums for $60 or less.
For example?
I mean, some of my favorites. One of my favorites is El Dorado from Guyana.
Okay.
And it's tough to get in Virginia, but you can get like 12-year-olds, 18-year-olds for $50 or something like that. And so if you wanted to kind of get equivalent value or equivalent quality in bourbon, you'd be paying a couple $100 for that. So things are cyclical. And so in many ways, I'm hoping to be ahead of the curve, hitting something that is underappreciated right now, and I'd like to set up a reputation. And when perhaps it becomes hot again, we'll be there ready for it.
I think it will. I mean, because right now, from a liquor standpoint, I think your big bad boy is probably bourbon, especially in the South.
Yeah.
I think from a clear, it's probably a vodka.
Yeah.
Just because vodka is in a lot of ways institutional.
Yeah.
I'm seeing gin kind of have a rebirth.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Worldwide, gin is going nuts right now. Like honestly, if you like go to any of the kind of the gin centric whatever hashtag sites or anything like that, or Instagram sites, it's explosive. Like I think in the UK, there's like 1,000 different brands of gin right now, and it's huge in Australia, New Zealand, and all over. So gin's becoming really big, but it is, like I said, things are cyclical. Honestly, my interpretation is like vodka was at its peak during the Sex and the City days, kind of like the 90s and stuff like that.
Because of the martinis, because they were drinking them on HBO, the show. Yeah.
And then bourbon has been hot for the last 10-ish years or something like that. So I'm hoping there'll be something new. Every year, like the industry says, oh, it's going to be brandy, or it's going to be rum, or it's going to be whatever next. So
you are an entrepreneur, and your strategic risk, and you trying to see ahead of the market is rum.
Partly. There's more to it than just that.
Okay.
As with like I told you. So there's practical reasons. So the number of distilleries in Virginia has exploded over the last 5 to 8 years, I would say. So our licenses are chronological in a sense, and so Vitae Spirits is number 26. We're now up to 72 3 years later.
Really?
Yeah. So like we're old timers being 3 years old. And
this is like the brewery piece all over again.
Yeah, no, it is, and so people are kind of making projections about how quickly and how far it should grow and stuff like that, which is another reason why I'm doing distilling. But if you go and look at kind of the repertoire of what's being produced in Virginia right now, I don't know the exact number, but I say something like 90% of what's being produced is whiskey. That's partly because of market demand. I mean, whiskey's a popular product without a doubt. That being said, if you basically sign a contract saying that at least 70% of your starting material will be of Virginia origin, you qualify for money from the state government. So there's basically government incentives to make whiskey in Virginia. And so there's a lot of reasons to do that. I mean, if you go and Google it, you can see there's a number of distilleries in Virginia that have gotten these aphid grants from the government.
Why is that? Because you're using the ingredients from the state?
Yeah, so aphid stands for agricultural forestry.
Vertical integration, essentially.
Yes, so it's promoting Virginia agriculture.
Well, that's a good thing.
In a lot of different ways. It's value-added products using Virginia. Yeah, I totally agree. But I'm simply saying that because of that, the industry is skewed more towards whiskey than what I think it would be naturally, because there's incentives to make whiskey beyond the actual product. So I looked at the niche when I was just trying to decide what to do, and I decided that rum was being underrepresented. There were rums that were being made in Virginia, but I think it's fair to say that they were not the focus of those distilleries back in that day, whatever, 3 or 4 years ago. And I then started producing rum, and I got my solicitor's license, which allows me to walk into a restaurant and like pour it for bartenders and chefs and stuff like that. And more than one place was like, God damn, we were waiting for someone to start making good rum in Virginia.
Well, I mean, Junction is literally saying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pat Owen is saying your gin is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pat Owen, for watching. Laura Jackson, thank you for watching. Josephine Humphrey, Sarah Hill Buczynski and Crozet, James Watson, Ray Cadell. Like and share the stream wherever you may be. Keep going.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so even though I just said we focus on rum, and we absolutely do, ironically, our gin is probably our most awarded product. We recently won Best Gin in Virginia in Drink Magazine. We won a silver medal with it in the San Francisco World Spirits Competition.
Good for you.
And the Drink Magazine one was not a solicit, like that was basically unsolicited. You know, sometimes when you enter competitions, you basically submit a product, and you, in some ways, you pay a big entry fee for them to analyze it and stuff like that. But this was unsolicited, so it's really pretty flattering to win that award and everything. So, so we now make 3 different rums. We have 2 that are in the ABC stores and stuff like that. But I have a fair amount of products that I call my Distillers Reserves that are really small production, or they're beta tests that I only sell.
Small batch? Is that fair?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Some of them, like our first release of our Old Tom gin, which is a barrel aged gin, we had 140 bottles of it. So we're sold out, and we're waiting for the next barrel to basically mature.
How long is that?
For gin, you don't age it that long. That's only 6 months. But what I was going to say is, I would say probably the product that I'm most proud of right now is our barrel aged rum, which is only 2.5 years old, but it's amazing what 2.5 years can do. And that's only for sale at the distillery, but I aged that in Cabernet Franc wine barrels from Keswick Vineyards.
Nice.
It was actually their 2014 barrels that they won the Governor's Cup with it. And I also aged it in bourbon barrels, and we blended the barrels. So it's this really complex, cool rum. And like sometimes I drink it and it tastes a little bit like brandy. Sometimes it's a little bit like whiskey, and sometimes I get all these smoky notes from it. So like, I'm really looking for, that was 2.5 years, and I have more barrels that I'll be releasing farther down the line that I can only imagine will get better and better too.
I'm excited about your future because you are a risk taker that is willing to essentially put your cojones on the lines. Yeah. And a perfect example of that is you went into this business and you bought the building.
Yeah.
A lot of people go into the business and they're trying to preserve capital because of the fear of the business not working, and then the need to inject capital back into the business. You said, nah, dog. I'm just going to go and buy the building, and then I'm going to make the business work.
Yeah.
That is a strategic risk that not many people would take.
Yeah. But that being said, I had the resources to do it also.
Right.
Because especially as a startup business, no bank is going to loan us money.
But those resources were probably, I don't want to assume, probably tied to family.
Yes.
Okay. That is a risk in and of itself. Because I think majority of people would rather take the money from a bank.
Yeah.
Granted, you're going to probably have some interest payments, some interest in some key components you don't like as much from the friend and family fundraising.
Yeah.
But when you take it from friends and family, and I did it with my business, I did it with life savings.
Yeah.
So that was scary as hell.
Yeah.
Okay. Literally saw the
That's
bank
where
account go down zero.
all my retirement's in that in that business.
Yeah. So I'm the same.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm the same. So where I'm going with this is when you do it from family, how did that how did that motivate you?
Yeah, so
This scared the shit out of you, right?
Yeah, I mean, because that's more motivating than the bank. Like,
right.
I mean, it's
totally agree.
these are my family, and these are people that are close to me and that matter.
And you're going to see on every holiday.
Yep, and so absolutely, and there are late nights where I'm working to not disappoint them.
Right.
And that's good. I mean,
that's great.
That's motivation and everything like that. So it keeps me caring. But it's also kind of like I want my mother, father, stepdad, brother, and wife to respect me. And that's one of the ways I achieve that is work my ass off for them in a sense.
How do you balance the family work? I struggle with this.
Yeah.
I have a 1-year-old wife.
Yeah.
Constantly have this conversation.
Yeah.
More to life than work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the work that keeps the mortgage paid and the food on the table and the opportunities down the horizon.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with this?
I struggle with it, but I'm lucky in a lot of ways too.
Okay.
So my wife, Susanna, she works like 2 doors down from here. She has a nice, steady job.
Okay.
That if on my end, if everything fell apart, we could probably pay our mortgage with her. I'm scared that I just said that because she's
I'll knock on wood for you.
Yeah.
I'll knock on wood for you.
And she's probably been mad at me for saying that, but that is a little bit of a reality. I don't have any kids, so I don't have that additional stressor. It's
a big one.
I know, and I do debate. Like, I mean, would I have taken the risk that I took if I had a child to take care of and a college tuition to pay down the line? So like, I'm not so sure. That would have been a major factor in the decisions that I've made. So
You're basically saying what you probably or may not have left your tenure track position at UVA if there was a Bambino in the household.
perhaps. Because I take my responsibilities seriously.
I can see that.
And like, I mean, if I have other people responsible for me, or that I'm responsible for other people, that's a big deal. I'm going to do the best I can for them, essentially. So.
Sure, and I could totally relate to that because this business turns 11 in May, and it's a few businesses we run out of here. And when I launched it, it was in 2008, and there was no Bambino.
Yeah.
You know, so I had to worry about a single person.
Yeah, yeah.
And
so that's it. So at the kind of quote unquote financial time end, I'm a little bit freer than your average person, I would say. But that's still personal. Like, I mean, the distillery is open the weekends. My wife has the weekends off. So like for the first couple years, we never overlapped on days off. Like my 2019 resolution is I'm going to take Sundays and Mondays off. So I at least have one day a week with her, so to do stuff and stuff like that. But you have to focus. Like you have to make it a priority to spend time and maintain relationships with your family and stuff like that beyond the work.
why not? Why on in the Rose Hill neighborhood?
You know,
Why not 151?
Yeah. So
Do you get that a lot?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of different things. Once again, to somewhat differentiate ourselves from what's currently out there, I think it'd be fair to say that most distilleries in Virginia are kind of farm/agricultural distilleries. Like they're kind of in more rural county areas. And
Like
stuff
Silverback.
Like that. Yeah, like they're on 151.
Yeah.
Or Ragged Branch.
Right.
They're beautiful farm.
They're in a neighborhood.
In the
Ivy.
Yeah. But that's serving a different customer, honestly. And I felt once again that representation in more urban environments was being underrepresented. We do have the advantage too of essentially walk-ins. Like, I mean, we poll people when they come in our door to try kind of to gauge both our marketing and get a feel for who walks in the door.
How'd you hear about us?
Yeah. And about 30% of the people that walk in our door because of Ace Biscuit and Barbecue next door. And so that is added bonus that I get being fairly central. I would have loved to have been on the downtown mall or something like that.
Was it too expensive? And you
was
wanted to purchase?
Yes. So it was both money, but it's also zoning. So we produce a lot of flammable liquids. So we need manufacturing zoning. We could have applied for, I guess, special use and things of that sort.
Special use permit?
Yeah, to basically waive some of the restrictions.
That would have
and stuff
driven
like
you
that.
crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Having to deal with City Hall and that red tape bureaucracy?
Yep. So I am psyched that this building came up. It's in M1 manufacturing zoning. There isn't that much manufacturing zoning left in Charlottesville. It's basically just like within, I'd say, 100 yards of the railroad tracks, and that's where we are. So it worked out. And in all honesty, the Rose Hill is a pretty like...
Oh, it's going to boom, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, you're in a gold mine spot.
Yeah, and so that's what just when we got the mortgage for the building, the bank was like just about the real estate investment in a sense. So like they're like, yeah, this is great.
So my mentor is Bill Nitchman.
Oh yeah,
and
we bought the building from him.
I was going to ask you that. So Bill Nitchman has been an incredible. I won't even call him a friend. Like I would look at him almost as like parental. And for 18 months, I shared a wall with him in the professional center on the downtown mall.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, Bill, I'm going to stop renting from you, and I want to buy, start buying into the Macklin building.
Yeah,
own
right.
40% of this building here.
Cool.
And he literally said to me, he goes, I'm going to help you figure this out.
Awesome.
And not monetarily, but just from an advice standpoint.
Yeah.
It's like, start an LLC. Do this, do this, do this, do that. And everything he said was like on point.
Awesome.
And
he ought to know. He knows what he's doing.
Oh my gosh, he so knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure you did. You saw that with negotiating the deal and the purchase with him.
It was awesome because like
he owns a good portion of that area.
Yeah, and he's building.
Yeah,
still.
he is.
And but it was just so nice dealing with someone that knew what they're doing. It's people that don't know what they're doing that are the pains in the butts because like there's uncertainty and stuff like that. But he was fantastic, and that's why like the fact that we got it from
This is such a small world.
Yeah, the fact that we got it from Craigslist was that much easier because he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he put that ad on Craigslist.
Yeah. Exactly.
So let me throw this to you here. Charlottesville, when you purchased the building and you said, I'm going to do this in the city, in the city limits, you were the only distillery then, right?
That's actually not quite true.
Who else was doing it?
Spirits Lab.
Okay.
Ivar As.
Okay.
He's down. He was over on East Market, actually.
Okay. And now?
But now he's on 6th, so kind of near the Yellow Cab area and stuff like that.
Okay.
So he got his license like 2 weeks before me.
Get out of town.
Yeah. So
and I celebrate all entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Celebrating all. You seem to have gotten a considerably more market share much faster.
I think we had different business plans and different targets. I can't say exactly, like in terms of how he got up and running, stuff like that, but I would say from the get-go, probably I had more capital at my access. He's running the place on his own. Like he's basically a one-man show down there.
Props to him.
Yeah, totally. No, and he does lots of fun, interesting stuff too. So I tell people about his business all the time. And actually, one of the pieces of legislation, we recently formed the Virginia Distillers Association, which is kind of like we push legislation. One of the things we're trying to get put through is to allow us, actually in our tasting room, to sell other Virginia-made spirits. So that's what, if that goes through, I'll be able to kind of carry Ivar's stuff in there. I'll be able to carry Ragged Branch in there, and so we can kind of make we kind of pull together all of our industry and kind of represent Virginia more broadly.
I love that idea.
Access too, yeah.
Yeah, because if you represent the industry more broadly, it's going to make it more educational, and then it's going to get people more loyal to the Virginia brands, just like the Virginia beers.
And that's what I mean. There is a certain level of competition I have with my Virginia peers, but for the most part, they're colleagues, and it's like the big internationals that I consider my competitors. I got to take market share from the big guys, not from my neighbors. Of
course.
So that makes it so that we all we're a pretty good team.
You would totally benefit, and I'm just spitballing as an entrepreneur here.
Yeah.
You would totally benefit if there was other distilleries, even other breweries that were springing up around you that created this corridor, almost like 151 or like the beer trail.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are.
Do we see that happening?
Yeah. So we are. The Virginia Distillers Association, our kind of guild association, is building that. But it takes a fair amount of effort and things of that sort, and that's actually some of the things that we're also trying to kind of work out in the future is organize basically our mutual marketing dollars to build things like spirits trails and stuff like that. So at the VDA, Virginia Distillers Association website, we actually are building an online trail right now, which hopefully in the future will evolve more and more into a real
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you get a stamp here, and at the end of visiting all these places, you get a T-shirt or a mug or something like that.
I love that, and that stuff, that's branding and advertising. That's what we specialize in. Let me throw this to you here. Is I'm seeing Meriwether Springs Vineyards vertically integrate their model with not only having wine but beer. Al Schornberg, the owner of Keswick Vineyards, has been on this show multiple times, and he's going to start carrying an IPA in partnership with Three Notch that's specific to his vineyard.
Awesome.
And why he's doing that is he's trying to appeal to more of the masses that come and visit his location.
Yeah.
Any thoughts of that in your future where potentially beer and wine? Or are you strictly right now going balls to the wall with liquor?
Yeah, so it's probably exclusively going to be liquor.
Okay.
And
have you thought about it?
Yeah, kind of. I'm not sure if this ever came up, but we do make beer whiskey.
Okay.
So we do a collaboration with Champion, and I put their beer through our still. So I distill a beer into a whiskey that we age and sell and stuff like that. So I can see things like that. The difficulty really is spirits are so drastically differently regulated than beer and wine that it's just a bureaucratic nightmare to combine those things. It's much easier to kind of combine fermented products like beer and wine than spirits. And that's why beer and wine are sold at Kroger. Spirits are not. So the only place you can buy spirits is from a government-run ABC store. So technically our tasting room is a government-run ABC store.
Get out of town.
Every bottle you see in there is owned by the state. I buy them back from the state to pour for you. I pay the exact same price as you do and everything.
Doesn't that in some ways nauseate you?
It's insane. And every single person you talk to about it thinks it's insane.
Right. It's so archaic.
Yep. And it hurts. Honestly, it hurts everybody
Of
because
course.
it's inefficient and your choice in Virginia is greatly limited because it's all what the ABC thinks should be on the shelves and stuff like that.
So in a lot of ways, the government is your equity partner.
Oh, absolutely. No, and there's good things and bad things. Honestly, is that at least with the Virginia ABC, you kind of know what you're getting. Whereas if you go to a completely open market where there's wholesalers and retailers and stuff like that, everything's much more in flux. Everything's a negotiation and stuff like that. So in some ways, it's nice to have a set of rules. They may be lousy, but you know what they are. But if you go into other markets, there's lots of unwritten rules and uncertainty. And
How about
like
the
that.
food
So,
piece?
Yeah. So are you asking that because you
I'm
have
just
heard
curious.
anything?
No.
So we're technically a distillery license prevents you from making food.
Really?
Yeah, we're not allowed to make food. People find ways to get around that. But
What,
it's
with the
usually-
food trucks on
Well,
site?
no, food trucks are fine. You can have food there. You just can't make it.
Why? Just because of archaic bureaucracy?
I can only tell you what I heard, and this is a little bit before my time. But our lobbyists at the time, when we were trying to essentially increase, I told you we can pour 3 ounces per person per day, so
Right.
2 drinks per day. We were trying to get it above that.
Which is not a ton.
No, 2 drinks is not much at all.
I mean, because I could go there.
Like your average male would be okay to drive after that.
Yeah, I could go there and
Yeah.
have like probably double that and be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I go to the breweries and do a tasting and probably have like, tasting of 6
Yeah.
different and then have a couple
Yeah.
pints.
And so almost every time we run into barriers, it's usually because of big vested interest elsewhere. So what I was told was by our lobbyist was that the Virginia Restaurant Association didn't want us basically taking business from them because they learned from the
Interesting.
breweries and the wineries
Right.
which make food.
Right.
And we were the last in line, and they had the ability to prevent distilleries from making food.
Interesting.
But then that's why we're limited to 3 ounces too, is because they don't want us to.
Take their bar customers.
Well, but also have people drinking a lot with no food around.
Right.
Because like the whole restaurants have to have 45% of their gross. I think it's their grossing.
Food sales.
It's food sales.
Yeah.
And so
Fascinating.
we can't be exempt from that yeah. So that's why there's a 3 ounce limit and no food.
It's so crazy how politics plays a piece of everything. So you're basically saying that the restaurants the restaurant game has been around longer than the distillery game.
Yep.
The restaurant game has more ears in Washington or in Richmond, and with the politicians. And because they have more ears and more sway and influence, they're able in some ways to limit what you can do with your business.
Yeah, and I'm not going to
You can't, because they're your customers that are
Right.
going to carry your
And
product.
I'm not going to solely point the finger at the restaurant. So I'm simply like that.
Some could be the breweries too,
Right, and as I say,
and the vineyards.
it is vested interests.
Right.
And so
Because it's competition.
Yeah.
There's only so many customers.
And that's why it's funny because like I was
This is
saying,
fascinating.
I was saying earlier, like your average citizen thinks all of this is crazy. But it's not your average citizen that's making these decisions.
Right.
It is the
Politicians.
vested, and the vested interests and kind of how the system works.
You're getting a lot of props here. Pat Owen says, I can't stand the ABC rules in this state. Couldn't there be a hybrid of state control and commercial distribution? Question for you.
Yeah, I mean, I know by no means do I understand the whole system, but there have been a lot of studies. I would say that go both ways. A lot of economic impact studies, especially when McDonnell was kind of, in a sense, pushing or suggesting privatization of ABC.
Talking Bob, the governor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, McDonnell. Yes.
Yeah.
He was yes, 2 ago. A number of the economic studies actually said that the state would ultimately bring in more money. There'd be uncertainty for a few years, though, and people don't like uncertainty.
Of course.
So yes, I think there's got to be models that are better than what we have, that are good for everybody. And the truth is, though, governments in particular move very slowly.
Yeah.
And getting things to change are difficult. I'm actually very optimistic, though. There was recently a change. The ABC became an authority, which, the way I understand it, means that they can run more like a normal business. So they will start having more flexibility in terms of how the ABC is run and stuff like that. It was a board, I believe, and I don't understand the legal definitions of that, but I hear it gives them more flexibility to do stuff.
To put how archaic the ABC is into perspective, it wasn't until like 30 days ago that the bars in the area were given the permission to market their happy hour deals on social media.
Yeah.
And that is just the definition of archaic bureaucracy, because prior to that, the extent of what they could do was put it on a sign in their spot, which no one was going to see until they got there.
Yeah.
And why it's so archaic is you would want to market and promote your happy hours, because that's going to lead to more tax revenue for the local and state municipalities.
Yep. And that's what, and I do have to. I'm gonna. This doesn't sound funny, but I'm gonna defend the ABC just a little bit.
Okay.
Is that they're just the ones responsible for executing,
of course,
the set of laws.
Yeah, they're not creating the laws.
Right. So they have a job to do.
Right.
And
that's a good
they
point.
do it the way they can. So it's really legislators and things of that sort that have to
Richmond
make these,
and DC.
Richmond mostly. So the state in general, states control the drinking and the purchasing.
Understood.
The feds, for the most part, are taxes.
Got it.
The feds really don't get too involved in your day-to-day. They really just want to make sure they're getting all their taxes.
So someone like a Denver Riggleman who owns a distillery, or his wife does, he's not going to have an impact in D.C. of what can happen at the distillery level?
Not so much.
Okay.
There are lots of things, though. Like, for instance...
Instead, it's someone like, David Toscano, or Sally Hudson, or Kathy Galvin.
Yep. Those folks are much more influential on the success of our businesses, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the feds matter. So in particular, we got really lucky that 2 years ago, we actually put through a craft beverage modernization bill, which for people or distilleries that make less than 100,000 gallons a year, we pay $2.70 per gallon of booze rather than $13.50. But that was only for 2 years. So that's kind of, so the feds invested in us a little bit for 2 years, drastically dropping our taxes. So at the end of this year, we're hoping to continue that small producers tax reduction and stuff like that. So that's about how much right now the feds really matter. We do have to run a lot of things through them. Like, there's lots of bureaucratic kind of things we have to run through them, so streamlining that system. But really, it's the state that does most of our on-the-ground control.
This is fascinating. Sarah Humphrey, thank you for joining us. She owns Fellini's. Jessica Farley, thank you for joining us. Stephanie Wells Rhodes of Intrastate. Kristen Johnson. Maddie Smith. You're getting some props from Aaron Kingsley. I used to work at the distillery at Vitae Spirits, and it is a great place to work. Love Ian. Like and share the feed. Wow, we're 67 minutes, 67 minutes in. You've crushed it. We're going to add this hat and this fabulous flask to the Wall of Fame here in a matter of seconds. Before I do, I want to create one more sizzle reel. I want to have you engage with the camera here, and I just want to to give you the show of what Charlottesville, who may not have been touched by your brand, what they can expect from Vitae Spirits, what the future entails for Vitae Spirits, and show's yours.
Yeah. So I think an important thing for me to kind of just mention is what we try to achieve at Vitae Spirits. We do try to make super high quality products, but in some ways, I'm kind of developing this idea of terroir. People might know terroir for wine. A wine is affected by its climate, its location, all that type of stuff. The land defines the wine to a great degree. I'm trying to develop that into kind of a concept for our spirits, where instead of just talking about the physical environment, I think what makes our products unique is the community in which we produce them. So an example, our Golden Rum is a collaboration with Ace Biscuit and Barbecue next door. It's a unique collaboration that only would happen because Ace Biscuit's next door. And we get fresh sugarcane. Brian over at Ace Biscuit grills that sugarcane on his hickory and oak charcoal that he makes over there, so it gets smoky and caramelized. The cane gets a nice flavor, and that's what we infuse into the rum to give it something different. And that, as far as I know, is the only grilled sugarcane rum that's produced. That is because we were in a unique location in Charlottesville. We make a coffee liqueur in collaboration with Mudhouse Coffee Roasters. That blend, that roast, that production happened because of the community in which we live and us working with our neighbors and things of that sort. So it's not simply that we're making high quality products. We're making products that are unique because of Charlottesville. So
I love it. Harris Tolber, let's sizzle reel that. And I think we want to add the hat for Vitae Spirits, my friend, and this fabulous flask to the Wall of Fame. He's going to go right next to, speaking of Richmond, David Toscano. Okay, so we were just talking about you, David Toscano. He routinely tunes into the program. He was sitting there about a few weeks ago. Harris, where do you think we should add this here? Why don't we take the piggy bank to a lower level? What do you think? I'm going to take the piggy bank to a lower level. I'm going to make sure Vitae Spirits is front and center for all shows moving forward. And then I'm going to slide David Toscano's mug over slightly. And I'm going to put Vitae Spirits touching Delegate Toscano's mug.
I should give David props, too, because he put through legislation that eased restrictions on low alcohol kind of spritzer type products made with distilled spirits that makes them possible now for distilleries.
So you have to follow in a lot of ways what's happening in Richmond. Do you have a front runner at all with Hudson and Galvin? Is that, you don't want to go there?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I have too many other things to focus on.
I totally understand. Dude, you crushed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, 71 minutes.
Zoinks.
Yeah, I was solid.
Thank you very much.
You are very pleasant and easy to speak with.
Thank you.
And I can tell that you're incredibly passionate of what you do,
yeah.
and you embody the mindset that if you make your passion your profession, you never work a day in your life.
That's right.
I think you feel that way.
Oh yeah, I think I'll live longer too.
Yeah, I think you will live longer too. Despite the fact that you're probably, what are you clocking, 80 hours a week?
I don't even know. Tons.
Is it 80?
No,
I'm doing 80.
Yeah, it's probably in that range.
Yeah. You gotta, when you make your passion your profession, guys, it's easy to clock 80. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate
Thanks
you.
for having me, Jerry.
Yeah. We will send you the content in 2 days. J-Dubs, you got the door for them. Great show. Ian is a Renaissance man. What I love about this program is the fact that we connect with fabulous people that are making Charlottesville better. This man put a lot of money on the line, a lot of family money on the line, purchased an office space, a building on Henry Avenue from my mentor, Bill Nitchman. And not only purchased the building, said, I'm then going to create a distillery in Charlottesville where, let's be honest, there was no other distilleries in Charlottesville. He said 2 weeks prior to his launch, there was a distillery, a one-man show on Market Street. But it's very difficult to be a pioneer. Oftentimes, the first to market are the first to get slaughtered. So when you're first to market, you have extra cojones and extra courage and extra belief in yourself and extra self-awareness and extra confidence because it's much easier being, let's say here, how can I put this? It is much easier being like, say like a Hardywood or a Champion or a Three Notch Brewery or a Wild Wolf or a Blue Mountain Brewery than a Samuel Adams Brewing Company. When you're Samuel Adams and you're first to market and you're going to say, I'm going to start the craft beer category and I'm going to go toe-to-toe with Bud Light, Budweiser, Miller Lite, Miller, Coors Light, and I'm going to put everything on the line and go toe-to-toe against the major players. Sam Adams, that took guts. Okay, and I think what Ian Glomski is doing at Vitae Spirits in the city of Charlottesville is a micro version of what Sam Adams did on the macro level. And I especially loved, and I'm going to get my boy Harris Tolber in the mix here, I especially loved, Harris, how he was highlighting his bet on the rum category. Because, I love a spirit. I love to have cold beers. I love a beverage. The bourbon category is saturated. The vodka category is saturated. The gin category, not nearly as saturated as bourbon and vodka. Bourbon and vodka are saturated. Gin, not as much. Rum is not saturated. I mean, outside of Captain Morgan's spiced rum, I would bet you would be hard-pressed right now to rattle off 3 or 4 different kinds of rum. And he's saying, Ian, that I'm going to go into and penetrate the rum category and try to build a brand and a flagship liquor. He also has fantastic gin. He's also making other liquors as well. But I'm going to penetrate liquor and rum, and I'm going to see if I can gain tremendous market share. And I especially loved Harris, how he said, my business model is to take the pie away from the big brands and not like the local competitors. Ian wants to celebrate the other local distilleries and build kind of like a 151 brew trail for distilleries. And where he wants to chop the pie away is from the Captain Morgan's or the Jack Daniels or the Jim Beam or the Absolute or the Grey Goose, the big boys that have no local ties. Harris Tolber is our director. I'm going to flip the script to you, Harris Tolber, and let you go anywhere you want, sir.
Yeah, Jerry. Ian was right off the bat, just very chill guy. I like how he defined himself too. He was like, I'm a laid back guy, but I'm a risk taker. I'm an alpha, but my biggest competitor is myself. And I thought that was really cool that like he needs to challenge himself and compete with himself to bring excitement into his life. And my question, I guess I could ask you this, Jerry, as an entrepreneur, when Ian was describing his whole journey as starting his company and his distillery and being a pioneer in his industry, he was constantly like listing off different like government policies that seem like so minuscule and like you would have to, I don't know. I guess my question to you is like, how do you gain the knowledge of all those little intricacies as an entrepreneur? Is it like a mentor? Is it like you just get slapped in the face with it and you learn from then on? Is it like doing your own research? Is it hiring a financial advisor in your industry? Like, how do you figure out all those little policies that he was describing, like not, zoning affecting what he can do, like if he were to start downtown? Or like only being able to pour like whatever he said per day.
3 ounces.
3 ounces,
which is not much.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dude, that's a baller question. So my response to that is, and I'm by no means a distiller. I am an entrepreneur that owns multiple businesses. 11 years in May, our anniversary for this business. My response to that is you pick up the knowledge slowly over time. I've been blessed with having a fabulous real estate entrepreneur and Bill Nichman, who's helped us build this real estate portfolio. But from the advertising agency, and we are the top ad agency in Charlottesville, it's trial and error. And the whole concept of trial and error is a scary freaking concept. And why it's a scary freaking concept is because, especially for first generation, and this is a first generation company, is you just have to figure out as you go. You learn from what worked well and what did not work well, and then you start doing what worked well over and over again, and then you optimize the path of what worked well through practice and through process. And then you start weeding out what did not work well. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what day of the week it is, it's either fortunately or unfortunately, failure is just a part of being an entrepreneur and running a business. And the more you fail, the more you grow as an entrepreneur and as a visionary and as a business owner. But the more you fail in the short term, the more agonizing it happens to be for your life and for your family, because that failure, especially for an entrepreneur who has his life savings like I do on the line, that failure, like, you take it to home. Like, it's one thing when you have a 9-to-5 or a 9-to-6, and I'm not marginalizing 9-to-5ers or 9-to-6ers. A lot of times you're able to leave the job at work. I am unable to leave the job at work. Okay, I legitimately bring everything with me home. My wife can attest to that, who's watching right now. I feel the pain and the success and the positivities that come with this business. Like, legitimately, like, if we have a great day, it's like you're on top of the mountain. If we have a bad day and it's not going good, it's like a sense of demoralization that is very difficult to put in perspective unless you're an entrepreneur and in the trenches yourself. So I guess where I'm going to go with this is you're going to learn from failure. Once you learn from failure, that's going to teach you what to do well. And once you learn what you're doing well, you continue down that path and you keep optimizing and you keep getting better at it and you keep growing and you keep going. It's not easy. And I say this oftentimes on this program, and I get frustrated with, here's a good example. I get frustrated sometimes with the mayor of our town because she oftentimes is demonizing or knocking or marginalizing or minimalizing entrepreneurship and being a business owner and having a capitalistic mindset. It is the mindsets of entrepreneurs and conscious capitalists, conscious capitalists focused on leaving Charlottesville in a better place, a social entrepreneur. It's mindsets like this that will help take Charlottesville to another level, will help continue maintaining Charlottesville's perch as one of the best places to live in the country. Okay? We should not marginalize or minimalize or demonize entrepreneurship, small business ownership. We should champion and celebrate small business and entrepreneurs because they are creating the business, they are creating the jobs, They are creating the disposable income for their team members, and they are investing back into the community through real estate purchases like we've done here, through real estate purchases like Ian Glomski has done on Henry Avenue. And when you purchase real estate and you revitalize it, like we revitalized this office, you are creating tangible value for the community that is then taxed, and that tax dinero and money and loot and moolah is then used for things like school improvement, street improvement, bike lane improvement, affordable housing allocation, stuff the community needs. When the community starts marginalizing and minimalizing entrepreneurship and business owners, then you're going to get a depressed economy. And when you get a depressed economy, that's when you're going to see true internal strife within the community. And I think since August 12th, and frankly, I'm going to cut to the chase. For centuries, we've had strife in this community. Vinegar Hill is a perfect example. When Charlottesville took Vinegar Hill away from the African-American community in Charlottesville, they took away businesses, and they took away jobs, and they took away homes. And businesses, jobs, and homes are the foundation for generational wealth. So when the Charlottesville government took away Vinegar Hill from the African-American community, they set our African-American community back generations in the city of Charlottesville, and that ain't right. And something should be done about that. And I will continue to champion and celebrate, black business ownership and incentivizing entrepreneurs that want to pursue ownership in the African American community, because I think it's a must. But where I'm going with this is this: we have had a lot of struggle in Charlottesville for a long period of time, and that was exasperated and certainly seen firsthand by all of us on August 12th. And that struggle is something that we should be extremely mindful of. But we should also be mindful of this: the struggle will be exponentially worse if the economy is also struggling in the community. And fortunately for Charlottesville, Virginia, and for Albemarle County, and for Central Virginia in totality, because Central Virginia goes as the city of Charlottesville goes. And fortunately for Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia, the economy in CVille has been fantastic. So let's not minimalize or marginalize or demonize or deprioritize entrepreneurship and what small business owners are doing. They should be celebrating, because we are taking risks that a lot of folks aren't willing to take. And 80% of small businesses fail in their first 3 years. And the ones that survive are the ones that are driving the economy in Charlottesville. I want to thank Ian Glomski, the founder and the owner of Vitae Spirits, for joining us here on the I Love CVille Show. He did a tremendous job. I want to thank Harris Tolber for being a stand-up guy and an A-plus director of this program. Judah Wickhauer and Lauren Linsky for helping produce this program. My name is Jerry Miller. This is the I Love CVille Show. We are back on air in an hour and 8 minutes with What's Barking Local, a program on the I Love CVille network that celebrates the animal community in Central Virginia, and it's powered by Animal Connection, Central Virginia's longest-running all-natural pet store. So in an hour and 8 minutes, tune back into the I Love CVille network and watch us celebrate and champion the animal community in the area. And we're going to do it, guys, by welcoming Kim Hawk, the founder of Dogs Deserve Better Blue Ridge in Central Virginia. She is literally going to farms and houses across Central Virginia, and she's finding at-risk animals that have horrible qualities of life. She's communicating with the owners of those animals and saying, I would like to take your pet and put him or her into a better situation so they can have a better quality of life. Imagine how difficult that conversation must be. And then once she does that, she takes the animal and finds another home for it where the quality of life is better. That is something I'm going to champion on the I Love CVille network. My name is Jerry Miller. We'll see you in an hour and 7 minutes now. Stay tuned.